Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual candidates forum for Ward 6 of Ward Councilor. The preliminary municipal election will be held on Tuesday, September 12th for Ward Councilor for Ward 6 and also for Ward 2. I'm Nancy Brumback. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Sudbury and will be the moderator today. I obviously don't vote in Newton. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Newton and UTV. Amy Goldman, you'll see up in the counter, is going to be our timekeeper, and she will notify the candidates when there's 15 seconds left and then when they must stop talking. I will now read the League's vision statement on a fair, respectful, and transparent elections in Newton. Statement is, we envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. To honor this vision and to protect the strength of our local democratic process, the League of Women Voters of Newton urges all residents involved in Newton's electoral process, whether as a voter, a supporter, an organizer, or a candidate, to encourage respect for candidates and voters in all that you say and do, to maintain a high level of integrity and reliability in all campaign activities, to ensure that communications are relevant, truthful, and fact-based, to become educated on the issues that are important to Newton's residents, to be open to honest debate, and to maintain civility as we focus on a shared interest in Newton's future. As we encourage everyone to participate in our democracy, we likewise encourage all to show one another courtesy and respect when speaking, listening, online, and otherwise engaging, especially where there may be disagreements. And now on to our forum. The League is responsible for communicating with candidates and organizing the format, the questions, and the moderators. New TV's primary role is facilitating production and dissemination of the forums. Members of the League of Women Voters of Newton may become candidates for public office. While the League encourages our members to be politically active, we have specific procedures in place to ensure the integrity of our forums and to fulfill our commitment to being a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Please be assured that all efforts are made to create a wall between all the candidates and the League forum planning. Specifically, this includes no access to forum questions. If you have a concern about this, don't hesitate to contact the League at info@lwvnewton.org. In Newton, there are 2 city councilors per ward elected at large and 1 city councilor per ward elected by only voters in that ward. This forum today is for the 1 ward councilor seat in Ward 6, elected only by voters in Ward 6. A preliminary election is being held because there are more than 2 candidates for this seat. The 2 candidates in the preliminary election with the most votes will be on the ballot in November. The City Council in Newton has the power to make, amend, or repeal city ordinances, approve the city budget, approve the mayor's expenditure of funds, approve land use issues, and confirm the mayor's appointments to Newton boards and commissions. The 3 candidates for the Ward 6 ward councilor seat are Martha Bixby, who has lived in Newton for 6 years and works in nonprofit leadership and political advocacy, Mark Holt, who has lived in Newton for 22 years and is a real estate datanomics technician, and the 3rd candidate, Lisa Gordon, grew up in Newton and is an education executive director. She is away on vacation and not able to attend this forum. The format for the forum, we will start with an opening statement from each candidate, limited to 1.5 minutes. Then we will have questions that have been submitted prior to the forum in writing by members of the public. The questions will be addressed to both candidates. We will use as many questions as we have time for, and sometimes questions that were submitted have been combined if they were on similar issues. So if you don't hear your specific question, it may have been combined with a similar question. Each candidate can respond to questions for 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds. We may have a rebuttal. I'll make that decision if it comes up for 30 seconds rebuttals. Then we'll go to final closing statements of 1 minute each. So we will now start with the opening statements for 90 seconds, starting with first Martha Bixby, your 90-second opening statement.
Hi, I'm Martha Bixby, and I'm running to be your Ward 6 City Councilor. As mentioned in the intros, I am somewhat newer to town, at least by Newton standards, having moved here just about 6 years ago. But as anyone who knows me would say, I jumped right in. I was just the PTO co-president at Mason Rice. I coach soccer, and you'll find me and my kids out on the fields and playgrounds all across Ward 6 all the time. I'm very active at the JCC and on the Safe Routes to School Task Force, and I'm on the Ward 6 Democratic Committee. Along with 3 other women, I co-founded Newton Neighbors, which grew out of the Facebook group Newton Neighbors Helping Neighbors. We started in March 2020 to help Newtonians connect with and support each other during the pandemic and beyond. Through this work, I've seen the generosity, creativity, and energy of the people of Newton and the challenges that people face every day. We have some big issues as a city right now, but so much of our everyday success is in the immediate issues in front of us. Making roads safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, maintaining and restoring the ecosystem at Cold Spring Park, and ensuring Crystal Lake is swimmable and accessible for generations to come. Our schools and small businesses, the 59 bus and the Green Line, and the aqueduct paths that connect us all. That's why I'm running for City Council. I'm running to bring the voice of the people of Ward 6, a community-focused voice, to our city government. I would be so grateful for your vote on September 12th. Thank you.
Mark Holt, your 90-second opening statement.
Thank you, Nancy, and I want to thank the Women's League for hosting this forum. And I'm glad that 2 of our 3 candidates are able to attend today's forum. I moved here from Nashua, New Hampshire. Melba moved from Beacon Hill, where she was studying law and practicing law. And we decided to live in Newton. Up in New Hampshire, I was putting together a real estate economics business. And I had the pleasure of serving in the state legislature for 2 terms. And that gives me a lot of experience when it comes to handling these state, federal, and local issues that Newton is desperately facing. So here's the bottom line. The state has mandated that we create some 8,000 high-density, multi-unit zoned apartments here in the city. And this is an unfunded mandate. And this is really the first time that the state's really reached in and taken over local control over our land use. Now, Melda and I moved to Newton because it was a comfortable, safe suburb. It had a great commitment to the school system. And it was a safe community. And so Jackie, as you can see, is our new media room, has just graduated from Newton South High School. She was preceded by Aiden 2 years before her. And we are committed to the community. We want to make sure that our schools and our community are as vibrant, if not better than the day we moved in, so our children can consider living here in their future.
We'll now go to questions. Again, 90 seconds for each response. I'll alternate one back and forth between you. So the first question goes to Mr. Holt, and it's a general one. What prompted you to run for city council? I think you were answering that already. You might want to continue that thought.
Yeah, sure. So like Martha, I had an opportunity to see the kids grow up through the Bowen School. They went over to Oak Hill. I was a youth coach, soccer, lacrosse, football. I was the treasurer of the Oak Hill PTO, and then I just got off the grants committee at Newton South High School. And the thing that really stunned me, besides the excellent commitment of the teachers and the principals here in Newton, was that we had no money for paper, pencils, and chalk. And last year, we discovered that 40 of our teachers were laid off in this community. Now, I've traveled all the state, gone to political conferences. I have not found one other community that's laid off teachers. So this is my primary concern. What is the financial challenges that Newton's facing that is forcing us to lose our valuable workforce?
Ms. Bixby, your reason for running.
So I've worked in politics and nonprofits for all of my career, and I never thought I'd be the one running for office. I didn't want to be the one with my name on the lawn signs and sending out mail. But here we are, because I think after everything we've seen over the past few years, and when our ward councilor said she wasn't going to run for re-election, it seemed like a real opportunity to bring the work that I've done and the voices that I've heard and the stories of people all across Newton, and especially all across Ward 6, into this next level of city government. As PTO president, and with my work with Newton Neighbors Helping Neighbors, I've heard stories from families who moved to Newton for all the reasons that we did, families that want to be able to stay here, and families that are struggling and families that are loving it. And all of those voices need to be a part of our city government. I also am the person that people text to ask if trash day is moved because of a holiday. You'll find me out clearing storm drains to stop flooding on our streets. And that's the kind of stuff that really matters to me, and that I know makes a day-to-day difference in people's lives. So I would hope to take that work into the city council every day.
The next question, how do you think you could be more effective as a ward councilor as opposed to being a councilor at large? Ms. Bixby.
So building off of what I was just talking about, so much of being a ward councilor is in our neighborhoods and constituent services. It's the stop sign by the school that helps make it so that kids can walk to school safely. It's the storm drains, it's Crystal Lake, it's Cold Spring Park, it's our playgrounds, our fields. It's looking at our villages and all of our small businesses and all of the people that live in Ward 6. And so you have a platform to talk about citywide issues. We can talk about schools across the city, and we can talk about budget issues, and we can talk about zoning throughout the city. But a lot of the day-to-day of a ward councilor is being in our neighborhoods, talking to people, listening to people, and helping solve problems right here.
Thank you. Mr. Holt.
Yes, well,
Ward councilor.
it's certainly true that it's nice to know exactly who your constituency is without necessary competition with other wards in the cities. But each councilor has the same vote on the city council. And my message for Brendan Owell and the other incumbent city councilors is, do not vote forward this new zoning ordinance until we have a full fiscal impact study. I asked our planning department, what's the fiscal impact of building 9,000 new housing units in Newton, of which over 1,000 would have to be affordable? And they told me that they couldn't calculate that number. But what they can calculate is how much profit a developer will make for building high density units in Newton. We cannot move forward and put our schools and our teachers and our taxpayers at jeopardy with this unfunded mandate from Beacon Hill.
Thank you. And now we go to a handful of ward specific questions. So the first one is, what are your thoughts on the Ward 6 Village Center in the village overlay zoning proposals, and how would you vote on those proposals? Starting with Mr. Holt.
Well, as I said, we have Thompsonville and Newton Center, bid on the Highlands. What they're proposing in the planning department is to create Kenmore squares out of all of our neighborhoods. High density, almost Eastern Bloc style architecture. Where are we going to put the 18,000 vehicles that people are going to demand? They call this the MBTA Communities Act, but none of these are located near the T, and most 90% of workers won't even ride the T to get to the place of employment. What this is all about is Boston, who has failed for the past 30 years to create housing for their residents, are pushing this problem back on us. And it's not fair, it's not right, and it's unlawful for Beacon Hill to pass an unfunded mandate on Newton.
Ms. Bixby. Do you need the question?
So I think we have two. Oh, no. Sorry. Should I go?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think there's a little bit of a delay. So I think there's two things happening right now. There's the MBTA Communities Act, which is coming from the state, and simultaneously the city council is looking at some redesign of our village center zoning, what they're calling the village center zoning overlay. And, I think through both of these, we have to look at what are the big picture questions we're trying to answer here. And part of that is creating more opportunities for more diverse housing within our community. Those are goals that I think most people in Ward 6 and most people throughout Newton share, especially when we can build in significant amounts of affordable housing, and we can put that housing near our small businesses, we can help support our schools, and we can reduce parking and car ownership by putting it near transit. So these are goals that I do believe we all share, and that we can be working towards as we refine these proposals over the coming months. We do have some things we really need to look at as we finalize these proposals. We need to look at the parking and paving maximums so that we can ensure that there are not too many vehicles and too much traffic, and that we're not paving over our open spaces and lawns. We also should be looking at our small businesses. I'm deeply committed to making sure that they are protected during this process and with any new changes and construction that might come.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Bixby. Would you convert the Triangle Newton Center parking lot to a different purpose? And if so, what?
It's a great question, and one I know that's been debated many times for many different reasons. I was intrigued by potential proposals for the senior center to move there. But I know that anytime we do look at these things, we do also need to make sure that we are making sure that there is parking for our small businesses, and that it's noticeable and accessible for people, both the people that want to shop there and the people that need to get close to the businesses by car, including our seniors. So I do think Newton Center has a lot of parking in various spots, much of which is sort of assigned to certain businesses, some of which aren't even open at the moment. So I think we can be looking creatively at that. And yes, looking at the Newton Center triangle, but I think there are also many other questions that we need to be answering right now as a city. So love to see open space, love to see potential housing or community space like the senior center, although that's got a new solution now. So I would love to continue that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Holt.
Yeah, so I've spoken to merchants down in Newton Center, and even myself have gone down there and could not find a parking space. I can't see how we can go forward as a community under this new zoning proposal and put 3,000 to 4,000 people atop high-rise buildings in Newton Center and find any place to park. And what about the people that would like to park in that area who have to take the MBTA down into Boston? So we have not come close to studying the fiscal impact of this proposed zoning ordinance. And we needn't rush into this. Despite what the Attorney General is saying and the Governor's office is saying, we are not forced to go forward headfirst into an unknown zoning that hasn't had time for consideration. Proposition 2.5 was a bill that we voted on here in the city just in March. It not only protects taxpayers in Newton, but it protects Newton from unfunded mandates from Beacon Hill. We have to have a fiscal feasibility study before we can adopt any zoning change that's mandated by Beacon Hill.
Thank you. This one will start with Mr. Holt. There have been complaints that the recent placement of boulders has limited access to Crystal Lake at Livingston Cove. What is your opinion?
Well, when I was growing up in New Hampshire, I was actually a lifeguard for the state park system. Very well visited lake up in Hollis, New Hampshire. Consequently, I got on the Resources Recreation Committee to take a look at water quality issues. The challenge with Crystal Lake is that it's not spring fed. It's basically storm drain system fed. And we have to be really concerned about the health of swimmers over there. I know we have some pumps set up on the other side. And I think maybe the proposal is to perhaps reduce the barriers to access to the city's swimming areas by eliminating the fees that we charge there up front.
Speak.
Yeah, so the Cove is right down the street from my house, and I spoke at a very early meeting about this proposal when my two boys were much littler, but wanted to make sure that they could still walk down to the water's edge when we were walking home from school, or they just wanted a place to wade in the water, that they could throw sticks in and enjoy the lakeside there. So I am concerned about the placement of these boulders. It's something that I've been asked about at every community event and very frequently on the doors as I'm door knocking throughout Ward 6. So it's clearly a big issue. And I do think, we can be doing a little more to communicate either why this decision was made, or allow people to potentially go and see it who are concerned about it. You know, and I think that once the project's open, there could be, you know, potential, and if I were to be elected, ways that we could either find to make that passageway a little safer. I was actually just looking at a photo. Could we put a little railing next to the ones that seem to be designed to be a staircase, or you know, river rocks around it so that there's smooth spots to step. So I do think there are some ways we could mitigate the concerns about, you know, just the casual access to the water that we all have come to love and enjoy at the Cove, while we also encourage people towards the bathhouse and the beach that has lifeguards and sand and, you know, all of those as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Outdoor seating in restaurant parking spaces is becoming more prevalent. In your opinion, is the elimination of parking spaces in favor of outdoor dining a good trade-off? Why or why not? Starting with Ms. Bixby.
Well, you would have found me on Saturday night on a very rare night out with my husband at Ginny's, sitting in the former parking spot, sitting outside and enjoying the sunset and the fresh air. So personally, and I know, you know, many of the business owners, it's greatly increased their capacity and their awareness. And I think in Newton, both through private initiatives and with the Parks and Rec department, you know, there's really been a lot of effort gone into making those spaces really nice. So I think overall they help bring, you know, energy and fun to our village centers. They help support small businesses, and we need to make sure, you know, they comply with the stated boundaries so that they're safe in the roads, and you know, that we do again continue to have options for people who need to drive into our village centers. But overall, I think that they've been a wonderful addition to our city.
Mr. Holt.
Yes, I agree. I mean, these outdoor dining spaces were opened up in response to COVID, and that disease has not been defeated. It's also a wonderful thing for the residents and for the businesses to have outdoor dining. I think we should make this permanent. I think we need to widen the walkable aprons all around Newton Center and not have those ugly Jersey barriers up there, so that we can actually have more space for people who are not just dining, but also people that are walking through. The traffic situation on Center Street as you approach Langley and Parker Road, it's always blocked and congested in the left lane because if you're experienced like myself, you stay snugged up close to Jenny's so that you can make it through that red light. I think we really have to eliminate a left lane turn there and just make that a one alley lane and give our pedestrians and diners more space and safe space to cross the street.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to more general citywide questions now. What actions must the city take to address racial disparities in housing opportunities? Starting with Mr. Holt.
So I've worked in real estate economics. I worked with the Boston Real Estate Board. I actually did some work for the city of Boston, the Menino administration. And I think that it's wrong to confuse race with income in this discussion and dialogue. What we have to really focus on is the core reason why housing costs are so expensive, not just here in Newton, but across the United States. It's not the land value itself, it's the cost of construction. And having put an addition onto this house, I can tell you that there's a lot of nonsensical environmental regulations, especially specific to dry wells, that not only drive up the cost of building housing and expanding housing here in Newton, but it also takes away from the land because you just can't build on top of these things. And from my experience on the legislative committee, these things are designed, they're super expensive, and they inevitably fail. As a matter of fact, the inspector said to me, I won't name his name, when that thing backs up, just disconnect those gutters and let it go across the lawn. So we're talking tens of thousands of dollars for a useless environmental regulation that puts big costs on housing production here in Newton. And that's not the only thing as well. The cost of inflation and interest rates under the Biden administration make it even less affordable for us to build and house our children and grandchildren.
Thank you. Let me repeat the question. It's what actions must the city take to address racial disparities in housing opportunities, Ms. Bixby?
So I think there's a number of things that we can and should be doing to increase housing opportunities across the board. I think when we look at creating affordable housing, making sure that there are units that have 2 and 3 bedrooms, especially 3 bedrooms, so that they are viable options for families with children. I think that we should be perhaps looking at something like a housing voucher mobility program, which would reach out to voucher holders and as well as local landlords to do some matchmaking and coordinating, as well as perhaps some translation assistance and tenant guidance. I also think we should be continually focusing our efforts on making it clear that we are a welcoming and inclusive city where everyone can and should have a sense of belonging, and that's something that's happening at our community events and at the neighborhood level, but it's something I see in our neighborhoods every day.
Thank you. This one will be for you, Ms. Bixby, first. What challenges do you have when moving around the city, and how can these challenges be solved and addressed through city council actions? Transportation challenges.
When moving about transportation challenges, well, I recently broke my wrist, and so for 6 weeks, I have not been able to drive. So I have experienced firsthand the joys of navigating Newton car-free. My family has tried to live car light, and my children have been very committed to biking or walking to school every day. So it's these are options that we're quite familiar with, but I've been taking the 59 bus and the 553 bus. I've been taking Numo, and I've been walking where I need to go. And it's doable, but it's not easy. And I think that we can and should be, really thinking about the ways to make these programs work the best they can. And particularly from the role of Newton, advocating for restoration, increasing our bus service, and the reliability and safety of all our public transit options. I also drive when I'm allowed to. And, we do see a lot of traffic and congestion, especially when you're trying to get across town, either at school pickup and drop off times, and at rush hour. And I think making safe routes to schools so that those school pickup and drop off times are as car free as possible. Trying to figure out how to get the buses back to being a reasonable price. Those are many options that we can continue to
do. Mr. Holt.
Well, yes, thank you. So I won't get any votes from the Newton South students on this, but I think we need to dramatically restrict and curtail student parking at the South High School. Most of them can walk. For children who have a disability and need to bring their own car to school, I think that's fine. But every morning, it's hazardous and dangerous just to get across Route 9 as the kids all decide to grab mom and dad's third car and park down at the South Lot. Over here at the Bowen School, which I live next to, we need to improve Langley Path's lighting, so we encourage pickup and drop-offs up there on the field. They all pile onto Cypress Street. They block both lines of traffic. And sad to say that we had a spotlight up there about 12 years ago. It got broken out and no one's fixed it. And the teachers told me that it gets dark after 3 or 4 o'clock in the winter, and it's not safe to go up there in the dark if they should choose to park up there. And here on Bow Road, where I live, we've become basically the overflow parking spot for the school. So we need to discourage this morning rush. And then beyond that, we cannot possibly add 30% to the city's population under this new MBTA Communities Act. To force people onto a failed, terrible consumer experience on the MBTA when they may not even going to Boston is going to add 16,000 new vehicles to our local traffic patterns. It's just not sustainable what the state and the planning department are suggesting.
Thank you. This question will go first to Mr. Holt. Engagement with our natural environment promotes good physical and mental health. Excuse me. What steps can the city council take to make it easier for those who work and live in Newton to become greener?
Well, as I said, let's get the kids and the parents walking to the middle schools, elementary schools, and high schools. Beyond that, I'm a big fan of the Webster Woods, but I think it was a half measure by the city council. We're now facing this $16-17 million lawsuit from Boston College. We should not be in an adversarial relationship with one of our valuable host institutions. It was a half measure. We left them with a rump of land. We need to go back there and pay them for the remaining parcel that we should have acquired back in 2016. Now, if I can get back to traffic patterns and talk about the Zoning Act, I personally spoke with Representative Honan from Brighton, who was the champion of the MBTA Communities Act. Councilor Honan said that there's all these communities, but not Newton, that doesn't have multifamily housing in their communities. In 2017, when he and I discussed this, we created the entire city into a multifamily zoning through our accessory apartment ordinance. This is a very valuable way to increase housing diversity, affordability. We just can't make it so difficult for existing property owners to build and improve the land. Every single family, 2-family, and 3-family property here in Newton, by right, can put up an additional housing unit on their land, or they can create one inside of their home. And that has been underutilized.
Thank you. Ms. Bixby, ways to make it easier to get green.
Well, I think there's, two pieces to this. One is making it easy to go green, and one is making it easy to get into the green and into our open spaces. In terms of going green, I think one of the biggest things we can be doing is reducing our dependence on oil and natural gas. I think I recently had the opportunity to go to Garland Road. They had a neighbor-to-neighbor sustainable street tour in conjunction with Green Newton. And it was so wonderful to see people who had pollinator gardens in their front yard and solar panels and heat pumps and induction stovetops and all of these things that they were able to showcase and how it worked on an older home or still, fit into what they were hoping for from their neighborhood. And allowed people to see the joy of adopting many of these measures. Simultaneously, I think we need to be holding the gas companies in particular accountable for their leaks. Fortunately, my bike accident was on a unpaved, unfinished natural gas trench, and they are not, after repairing leaks, even not repaving roads to complete street standard. And I know a significant portion of Newton's, carbon emissions are from these gas leaks. And we need to be doing everything we can to restore and protect our open spaces and make it easy for people to get in and out of them. Cold Spring Park, Newton Center, and much more.
Thank you. Mr. Holt, did you have a?
Yes, I want to follow up to something that's very important that's been going on. The Utilities Commission several years ago, we contracted, and
30 seconds.
We as ratepayers have and should be entitled to the Quebec hydro power, which has finally been cleared by the main courts. This has gone back up to Beacon Hill, and I'm very concerned that the politicians on Beacon Hill are going to deny us that clean, affordable electricity generated by hydropower in Quebec, and they're going to rip us off and basically sell it to another user.
Ms. Bixby, do you want 30 seconds to? Okay. The next question is, and we'll start with Ms. Bixby. What city council committees would you want to sit on and why?
It's a great question. And right now I'm mostly focused on getting to November and seeing what the options are. I think, as I've mentioned, issues of importance to me are transportation and road safety and public spaces. So, I'd be very interested in looking at ways that I could have the most say on that. I also think that city councilors participate in many task forces and other opportunities to get involved. So would, be very interested in participating in and being a part of those conversations throughout our city as well. So I think that's what I'd be looking at.
Thank you. Mr. Holt, what committees would you like?
Yeah, absolutely. Land use. What we're facing right now is an opportunity and a threat. If we barrel forward with this unfunded mandate without a fiscal study, we allow developers to rush in here, build 7,000 or 8,000 additional housing units, our school budget will collapse. We will have a shortfall that I've estimated between $100 to $200 million annually. The difference between the services that those residents are going to demand versus the property taxes that those developers are going to pay.
Okay, this one, starting with Mr. Holt. Would you support the appointment of a dedicated diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI director for Newton?
I'm not in favor of adding any more administrative overhead or staff unnecessarily. We already conform to both the state and federal equal opportunity laws. I think that that's just going to be distractive and divisive here in the community. What we need to do is increase our budget for the school department and bring teachers in to the classroom that can teach our students American history and civics. My children didn't know anything about how government worked. I thought that was the point of a public education. We have to put political science on the MCAS exam and not just general science.
Ms. Bixby, DEI director.
I think it's a really important idea, and I think that it ties into many initiatives that are important to our city right now. One thing I've noticed is, the increased need for translation services at many city events and public meetings. I think that we need to constantly be looking at ways to make sure that especially our appointed commissions are very representative of our city and representative of the many viewpoints and life experiences that people throughout Newton have. So I think, if we could look at the job description and make sure that, all of these pieces are a part of a role like that those conversations are very important for us to be having as a city right now. And I think that it is something that ties into all pieces of our city.
Okay, this one starting with Ms. Bixby. What, if anything, should the city do to attract new businesses to the buildings that are vacant around our village centers?
I think this is a tremendously important question, and something I know, folks at City Hall are working on, and something that we can be doing, again, both from the city side and from us as citizens. I know many times people have been matchmakers in this way. I saw an empty storefront and knew a friend who, was looking to open a business. I also think there's been some innovative, we have a Newton resident who runs a business that supports pop-ups. And I think we've had a number of local businesses who've gone, they put in pop-up stores, in empty storefronts. And then those businesses are able to then, open a storefront later once they've built up a customer base and a following. And so, I think programs like that are extremely exciting and something we should be pushing more. We also see that sometimes food trucks can be an entry point. The dining car used to be my favorite food truck in Boston, and now they're right around the corner from us in Newton Highlands. So finding these entry points, and especially using empty storefronts for things like pop-ups could be a very exciting way that we can continue to support small businesses coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Holt.
Yes, well, we absolutely need a thriving and vital commercial property sector here in Newton. The value of the Riverside office building was just sold for half of what it was purchased for 3 years ago. This equalization, our tax base, is going to put a crushing burden on the residential property taxpayers here in Newton. Now, I previously mentioned this $15 or $16 million lawsuit from Boston College for leaving on the rump of the Webster Temple, Michigan Tefila purchase. We need to eminent domain that property back, not for conservation, but for economic development. We need to bring clean industries that produce tax rolls and commercial property tax base if we're going to fund this municipality in the future. Newton is facing a $1 billion pension deficit. Last year, our pension fund lost $50 million, and this year, we've restricted our contribution to the pension deficit. Newton's going in the wrong way financially here. The last thing we need to do is throw 8,000 multifamily, low quality housing units into the community and make our financial situation even worse.
Thank you. You may want to continue that thought of this question is, what do you think is the most important strategy that Newton can pursue to make the city affordable to live in? Mr. Holt.
Well, like I said, we have to look at this unfunded MBTA's community mandate and present a fiscal analysis to the state auditor who's responsible for deciding if this is an unfunded mandate. You know, in New Hampshire, it's constitutionally a restriction on the legislature to pass costs on to the cities and towns. The state auditor Bump last year said that Beacon Hill is already shorting Newton and other communities $2 billion a year. We can't go forward with Beacon Hill throwing unfunded mandates on the community of Newton and taking away our land use sovereignty. It's the wrong direction. It's going to impact our schools and our teachers and municipal workers. We simply can't afford to not stand up and challenge what's being put on us.
Ms. Bixby, strategies to make Newton more affordable?
Well, I think there's a lot of pieces to affordability. I mean, the biggest one for most people is housing. So finding ways to increase our affordable housing options and increase our variety of housing options so that, you know, retirees who want to downsize have a place to stay in the community. And, you know, but they can do that young families who are just starting out have a place to go. And you know, raise their children. So I do think that making sure we have a variety of options there is one of the biggest things we can do. But we also need to look at all the other questions of affordability, food, childcare. These are all big expenses, and there are many creative and wonderful programs in Newton that are helping tackle them. We've got the Boys and Girls Club for after-school programs, and you know, many school-based programs. We've got but you know, early childhood costs are extremely high, as are, you know, food and many other items. So I also think, like we've, you know, both been saying tonight, looking at ways to help people get around town for free or cheaper, you know, making sure it's safe to bicycle and walk. This is a big way that people, you know, can participate in our community in a more affordable way.
Thank you. And this one will be for you first, Ms. Bixby. Many people feel there's a lack of transparency around the activities of the City Council. How do you intend to ensure that the residents of Newton know about the issues being discussed in the City Council and how you voted on those issues?
So one of the things I've spent the most time on in Newton is writing newsletters. I helped found a project called Welcoming Newton, which then grew into Newton Neighbors, which, you know, was very much dedicated to helping people learn about what was happening in town and what the important issues were, and everything from local events to, you know, I heard from many people who had moved here from abroad, things like knowing what poison ivy looked like or what a tick was, you know, can make or break your summer. So that's something that I've done throughout my time in Newton and would very much continue to do as councilor. You know, I also think that things like hosting regular office hours is extremely important. And there's nothing like sitting down face to face and talking to people and talking through the issues and hearing what's on their mind. And you truly can find us at most of the community events in Ward 6. We are at the Hyde concerts almost every Friday in the summer. We were just at India Day at the Hyde on Sunday. So, you know, we're at Crystal. You can come up and talk to me anytime now. And if I were to be elected, you know, those are important things and important conversations to have in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Holt?
You know, journalism is crucially important to our democracy. It's our fifth estate. And we've seen that the rise of digital technologies has destroyed the traditional business of the broadsheet. It was a real loss for me to lose the tab. Now we have a couple of emergent online newspapers like the Fig City News, which I'm actually financially supporting. But I think we also have to pay attention to the fact that we have a wonderful facility in New TV, but its funding is threatened because it's funded by cable TV fees, and people are increasingly cutting the cord when it comes to their cable package. As someone who sat on the grants committee for Newton South High School, I was a little disappointed that we weren't seeing more encouragement of student journalism. They're the people that are most affected by the decisions that are made at the city council. I would really encourage them, and this gets back to my discussion about the lack of civics education in our high school. Until we educate our children about their participation in this democracy, there's no amount of things we could do other than promote education.
And this will be the last question before we get to the opening statements. And it goes along with the idea of providing information. Would you be willing to vote to have the city pay for upgrades to the city's website? Start with Mr. Holt.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And how important do you think this is?
I mean, it's crucially important. As a candidate, they've done a pretty good job. I've gotten studies such as the City of Newton Inclusionary Financial Feasibility Analysis, which told me that we spent lots of money assisting developers in making profits on high density construction here in Newton, but we had no fiscal analysis in terms of the impact of the city budget. So yeah, absolutely. I would increase funding and make sure that everything that's available in our documents at City Hall is available to the public online, including for journalists.
Thank you, Ms. Bixby.
Thanks. I think I know that the city just went through some renovations of the website, a relaunch, and I think in some ways it's more navigable. You can go in, and if you've got a question, you can kind of follow the question through, and in those cases, I do think it's doing what it needs to do. But I do know it can be very hard to find back issues. Certain even NPS. We were trying to see how many students were projected to come into Mason Race over the next few years, and the file just wasn't there right now. And I know we heard that it was planning to be right back up again in the fall. So I know they're doing some work on these things, but it is we go there to find this stuff, and in the day and age of search-based functions, hopefully a lot of that stuff would be very much more easily findable on the city website. I also think, people aren't quite aware of the 311 app as much as, I use it a lot to, report storm drains that are clogged, or, and I can't kick away the debris myself, or, many other issues throughout the city. It's not also not the easiest app to use. It's a resource for people. So I think we can continue to build on the innovations that we've done to make sure that people can use these things both from their computers and their phones.
Thank you, and thank both of you for staying within the time limits so well. I don't think I had to interrupt you once, so great job. We now go to our 1 minute closing statements from each of you, and we'll go reverse from the opening statements order, which means that Mr. Holt will go first with his closing statement, and then Ms. Bixby. Mr. Holt.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Martha, for attending today's forum. As I walk around the neighborhood, I see the signs coming up about the Boylston Street project. Before that, it was the Needham Street project, and then over on Route 9. Newton has, for 22 years that I've lived here, tried to manage our duty to have affordable housing here in Newton. We're only 370 units short for affordable housing units by the 40B mandate. We're a community of over 30,000 residential properties. We need to, when I get in office, we will directly address the creation of affordable housing for our workforce. This is our teachers, our firemen, our municipal workers, and also people that serve our businesses. We cannot keep going on and waiting for developers to open up new projects and set aside supposedly 2 affordable units, but one has to be set aside anyway, because for each housing unit that's created under 40B, 10% has to go towards affordable housing. So let me restate that. For every 100 housing units that are created here in Newton, 10 have to be subsidized by the taxpayers as affordable housing units. We cannot go forward this way. We've got to take direct action and create those 400 affordable units. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bixby, your closing statement.
Thank you to League of Women Voters and to New TV for hosting this important conversation. The job of the ward counselor is representing our neighborhoods and constituent services. I'm deeply committed to our Ward 6 neighborhoods and villages and to making things better every day for our local communities. I also believe we can have a positive impact on big issues, climate change, transportation, good jobs, creating homes for people, when we take action in our community and with our community. That's why I'm asking for your vote on September 12th. Thank you.
And thank both of you for participating today. I also want to thank New TV and the League of Women Voters of Newton for providing this opportunity for candidates to make themselves known. And to the audience for all the questions they sent in. A reminder that these candidates are running for Ward 6 ward counselor, and only Newton voters in Ward 6 may vote for one of these two or the third candidate. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday, September 12th. If you can't get to the polls that day, you can vote absentee or early, by mail, or in person. For further information, call the Newton Election Commission at 617-796-1350. We need one of those cute little things that shows the phone number on the screen. If you don't know where your polling location is, you can call the Newton Election Commission or visit the city's website at www.newtonma.gov. On the election department page, you can find your polling place. Be sure to check the Newton League's website at lwvnewton.org for more information and to see our upcoming voters guide. Today's forum is a co-production of New TV and the Newton League. Any use or reuse of this program requires the approval of both New TV and the League, and it must be shown in its entirety without any editing, only after the program initially airs on New TV. The League is the nonpartisan political organization that promotes informed and active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose specific candidates or political parties. We do, however, take positions and advocate for issues that we have studied. Membership in the League is open to all people. Even though we say the League of Women Voters, men are more than welcome. For information, contact or visit www.lwvnewton.org. New TV is Newton's award-winning state-of-the-art media center, specializing in television production, training, and building community partnerships. It is Newton's primary source of locally relevant programming. Membership in New TV is open to all Newton residents. For information, visit the website at newtv.org. Participate in our elections, and remember that democracy is not a spectator sport. I'm Nancy Brumbach for the League of Women Voters of Newton, and thank you for watching.